True. Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirate lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chimpy drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.
So I want to take this time to respond and reply and just add some more context based upon my previous video. Delineationists are dumb, and this is Sergeant Willie Pete versus Neferkari Dessalines. And this is particularly to elucidate on just the brilliance of Neferkari's point in pointing out that the tribalists, the ethnic nationalists, are the primary ones creating problems on the African continent. Now, with respect to Paul Biya, anybody who is familiar with what's called France's Vietnam or La Guerre Cachée, and this is the military history of La République France within Infra-Saharan Africa, you would be aware of the genocide instigated by de Gaulle, as well as the fact that France created their Central African franc, the monetary system that has 14, French-speaking Francophone African nations within a chokehold. That was instituted in Cameroon, right, according to the Hidden War. And the United States during that time was allied with La République, France. See, a lot of the imperialist states were basically trying to keep a lot of the so-called Southern Hemispheric or Southern cradle states down, right? And this is why these European elites and these European nation states were allied in the realm of destroying any attempt at Black liberation. This is why, Dwight D. Eisenhower ordered the deletion of Patrice Lumumba. And this is why, the DSGE and its associated services wiped out a myriad of leaders from Yobe in Cameroon, Felix Moumier, to, Sylvanus Olympio in Togo. These Western intelligence agencies have played a deep role in instigating these authoritarian regimes against the masses of African people. So any person on the African continent should have an issue with these ethno-nationalist, delineationalist, tribalists, right? These delineation tribalists, these Tanzanite grifters, right? These ethnocentrists, they should have a problem with them because, especially in the case of the United States, these types of imperialist, we want a bigger piece of the imperialist pie Negroes are the ones instigating violence, are the ones facilitating the U.S. imperialist, oligarchical, capitalist regime when it comes to, harming the ability that locals on the ground have towards liberation, the ability that they have, right, to be able to just live freely, and enjoy their country. So when it comes to Paul Biya, specifically the case of Paul Biya is a tribalist, an ethno-nationalist who is running an authoritarian regime, primarily against the grassfields populations, the western region of the country, that includes the northwest, parts of the southwest, and the west. These would be the descendants of Yen, right, in Chare, Ngwonso, and Ngambe, according to certain oral narratives, right? So these populations are the primary populations that France wanted to prevent from gaining power within Cameroon because they were the main ones during La Guerre Cachée, or the Hidden War, or France's Vietnam, who were fighting back against French imperialism. And many of these individuals, such as Ibrahim Bumbu Njoya, such as Latin Some, right, they were working with the Garvey movement. In 1920, there was actually a branch of the UNIA within Douala, right, largely manned by these same populations. So you had a long-standing association with Pan-Africanist resistance, which is what led to, the Hidden War, what is called the Hidden War in French history, which was really a genocide, the last major genocide of the 20th century. According to the official numbers, they say hundreds of thousands have been killed, were murdered, but, modern estimates put that at 1 million And this was a genocide primarily of the Bamileke population in West Cameroon. And this is also why you have a very, very large diaspora, an industrious diaspora of the Bamilekes, because in Cameroon, there was a lot of resistance and, anti-colonial, anti-imperialist activity on the behalf of the Bamileke and the rotating, labor associations, or SUSUs. They were able to build an economy, build agriculture, build infrastructure, be able to engage in trade, maritime trade. This is what was happening within the grass fields. This is what was happening within Cameroon during the colonial period. These Bamileke-led initiatives, like the Jangwi, were on the same level, at par, with a lot of the labor camps used by France during colonialism. This is why France created Bamiphobia, a technique, a tribalist technique that is still being utilized by Paul Biya in Cameroon today. And it basically associates Bamilekes with the dirt, the muck, the mire, the grittiness. Because a common stereotype within Cameroonian culture is the fact that the Bamilekes like to be in the mud today to make money and be on the top of the palace tomorrow. This is a very common stereotype. And you see it played out within, the discourse, because many Bamilekes are castigated by other Cameroonian ethnic groups as being dirty, as being filthy, as being vile. And even politically, the goal of France, La République, the Francophone system, the regime, is to prevent any Bamileke from ruling, because the Bamilekes are industrious. In many different instances within Cameroonian culture, they are called the Jews of Cameroon. They have Sudanic origin, not necessarily Bantu. We know Bantu is a Greenbergian category, but they are a Sudanic population who migrated south from the Sudanic zone and adopted certain Bantu lexical items, which is why they're called Bantoid. But in reality, they have lineages that descend from the Tikar people, the Mboum people, all the way back to Sudan. And they migrated into Cameroon in their present location. So the tribalism against the Bamilekes, the ethno-nationalist delineation against the Bamilekes, is the core, it's the corpus of what keeps the Biya regime afloat. If it wasn't for that ethno-nationalism, you wouldn't necessarily have a regime, because there's been a lot of rivalries instigated by France in between the Bamilekes and other related populations in the grass fields and the so-called Bantu populations. This is called divide and conquer. They've been doing this from time immemorial. And this is what they are using in order to maintain their control of the society, right? Comto in 2018, Comto won the election against Biya in 2018. The rigging was so clumsy that they ended up giving Biya more than 100% of the vote in certain tallies, in certain locales. And this type of rigging, you're seeing the exact same thing with this election with Chiroma, the main challenger. Chiroma's data and his, post-election surveys, his exit polls seem to display that he was winning the vote by a landslide. But if you look at some of the reports, especially within the Grassfields region of the West and the Northwest, Biya carried those regions by a landslide, which would be insane because that's his primary opposition. That would be similar to Kamala Harris winning Texas by 50 points, or Donald Trump winning California and Hawaii or some blue state like Massachusetts by 40 points. It's just unrealistic with respect to the politics on the ground. And numerous of these election workers have been exposed for blatantly lying. But look, if you look at Elecam, if you look at the Cameroonian Electoral Commission, All of the main leaders are members of the RDPC party, of Biya's party, the CPDM in English. They're all members of this party. So if his regime controlled the people counting the vote, what makes you think that Chiroma would win? And I've been saying this, for those on my Patreon, those are the members. I've been saying that even if Chiroma gets the vote, he's still going to have to seize power. And Chiroma and many other opposition candidates have indicated that they are willing to fight the rigged election, right? To fight this world record-breaking rigged election. And to me, it is the perfect environment for a palace coup. Anybody who wants to take control, be it Russia, China, the United States, France, Israel, or anybody who has a diplomatic relationship. Israel runs the military intelligence of Cameroon. So any nation who has that ability is the perfect time for a palace coup. And it's really hypocritical and ironic because Nguema of Gabon, who was the leader of a palace coup, congratulated Biya. And this is speaking to the Ekong, Beti, Pawin, type of ethno-nationalist, solidarity. Because if you look at Equatorial Guinea, if you look at Central and Southern Cameroon, as well as Gabon, all of these nations are controlled by the same ethnic group. And largely speaking, if you look at the Sawa and the Bassa and other populations, there is a Bantu type of nationalism or even Bantu supremacy directed against the Bamilekes, as is instigated by France, by the Republic, so-called. So if you look at, the point that Neferkari Dessalines was making, it is clear that for people like Osheduk Jackson, who promotes FBA delineation while living in Uganda, scared to challenge Museveni, maybe because he fears and all the stuff that he was doing with those young girls coming out, who knows, right? But for somebody like that to promote FBA delineation and attack Pan-Africanism when it is tribalist, Beti, Ekong, Efang, ethno-nationalists like Biya, right, who are running Africa into the ground with their corruption, right? You leave those people who are promoting delineation in their own right, who are promoting tribalism and the sapping of resources in their own right. In Cameroon, it may be Bantu supremacists versus so-called Sudanic or Bantoid, right? In Somalia, it may be the Somalis versus the Mushunguli, which they may call Bantu. In Nigeria, it may be Igbo versus Yoruba. In Uganda, it may be the so-called Nilotic populations versus the so-called Cushitic populations. And again, it's just fascinating how these ethno-delineationists, whether it's the fecal brain assimilationists following John Tantonism and the Tantonite babble, the Tantonite propaganda, or it's a lot of these, delineationists and tribalists on the African continent, they all use ideology, categories, and frameworks from European. All of these Africanists, these Africanist colonial slave traders are the ones who created these ethnic labels. The Afro-Asiatic, which was Hamido-Semitic, the Nilotic, which used to be called Ethiopic, or Cushitic, which used to be called Ethiopic, Nilotic, which is Eastern Sudanic, Niger-Congo, which is Western Sudanic, right? Whether you look at Karl Meinhof, who was the inventor of Niger-Congo, who was a Nazi, Dietrich Westermann, and all of these Europeans, Gottlob Adolf Krauss, who created the Kwa language family in West Africa. These are Europeans, Hamidicists, who formulated these identities. So what you'll find is that Pan-African nationalists are typically those who promote Black social formations, while the ethno-nationalists and the delineationists are those who promote, white ideas, because they're step-and-fetchits, they're tap dancers, they don't have a thought of their own, they're complete robots, they're kunological bots. And ultimately, it's best to just dispose of them because they clearly don't know anything about geopolitics. They know absolutely nothing about what's going on in Africa. They can't see how their fecal brain assimilationist buck dancing is literally the same failing, corrupt ideology on Africa that has these presidents running for 2, 3, 4 decades, right? It's the U.S. military that's putting these puppets because their allies are always good allies. They never have anything to say about their democratic rights abuses, rigged election, corruption from head to toe. They have absolutely nothing to say about it because they're hypocrites. So ultimately, stay strong out there, y'all. Again, global Black unity should just be called Black common sense. That's all I got for y'all on this. I hope to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chimpy drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.